Dark spot mistakes. In this video, we're going to be talking about the mistakes that we see our patients making with hyperpigmentation, melasma, and any form of discoloration. And dark spots are one of those things where no matter how much you invest and no matter how much you do, if you make a mistake, it can be costly, and so costly. You not only undo all the progress you made, you might actually have worse dark spots than you did a day ago. So we will walk you through how to avoid these common pitfalls. We're going to be going through 11 different dark spot mistakes, and this was built on in a very logical order so that each mistake kind of builds on the next one. So definitely try to watch this video all the way through. We also have the dark spot cheat sheet, which many of you have found very helpful in the past from our previous videos. It's extremely comprehensive. It goes over every ingredient and procedure that we use to treat dark spots in the clinic. So the top 11 dark spot mistakes, here we go. So first we have to set the framework on what causes hyperpigmentation, melasma, and dark spots to form. So there's usually some type of triggering event, which is usually inflammation, sun exposure, estrogen, something that triggers your melanocytes, which is the pigment producing cell of the skin, to produce more melanin. And this happens through an enzyme called tyrosinase. Once that melanin is produced, it's packaged in a tiny little vesicle called the melanosome, and then it's transferred to your skin cells. So you have production of melanin, transfer of melanin, deposition of melanin. And so any treatment of dark spots really needs to cover all three steps to be fully comprehensive. So let's go on to our first dark spot mistake. The first mistake is probably the most important, and it's that you need to be proactive and preventative in treating your dark spots, not reactive, meaning just wear your sunscreen. It sounds simple, but actually making this part of your daily life is not only extremely important, it is the cornerstone and foundation for being able to treat your dark spots. And if you are someone who is struggling with dark spots, treating your dark spots and has especially melasma, all of your progress will be undone if you do not do this step. I have patients that will have tremendous results with their melasma. They'll spend one night out in the sun or one day out in the sun, and it will literally reverse 3 or 4 months of treatment. And so wearing sunscreen and being diligent about it, especially in this population, is more critical than ever. Now, we usually see SPF 30, and I think that's enough in most cases. If you're very sensitive, SPF 50 for this population is helpful. And then not everyone is going to like a tinted sunscreen, but tinted sunscreens are very helpful here because we know that the iron oxides in tinted sunscreens block blue light, and we know that blue light is a contributor to melasma. So tinted sunscreens are extremely helpful here. We also have some new sunscreens that are on the market and more that are developing that have some other ingredients that can block blue light, like ectoin. We're still on the verge of developing these types of things, but we're really getting closer there where there's going to be sunscreens that are specifically made for people that are prone to melasma. But wear the sunscreen, that is the key. Okay, next mistake is not treating the underlying cause. We talked about different ways you can get dark spots, but sometimes it's something subtle that you're not thinking about. It may not be a big inciting event. It might be something like acne. It might be something like inflammation from eczema. And so the key component here is you cannot treat the dark spots until you've treated the cause, because if you treat the dark spots, the cause is still going on. Then you're gonna get new dark spots from that cause you didn't treat. Does that make sense? Because it actually does work. Absolutely. So like I said, there's an inciting event that triggers those melanocytes. You want to block that inciting event. So if you have acne and that causes inflammation and you're not treating that, then you're going to get that hyperpigmentation. It's going to stick around and continue to form. And sometimes even medications can cause this, so it could be more of a subtle cause that you need to identify with your dermatologist, but treat the underlying cause first and then treat the dark spots. So whatever that is, try to treat that first. Now, the next mistake that people make is just using a single ingredient to target dark spots, and we've said this a million times. Right, so even let's say a foundational ingredient like vitamin C, this is something that most dermatologists will say if you have 3 ingredients, vitamin C is probably your morning staple. Or I will go so far as to say even if it's the gold standard of dark spot treatments, hydroquinone, you still need to be using supporting ingredients. And the reason is not only because it takes multiple things to get the best result, it's also one of practicality and physiology. Like Dr. Shaw said, there are multiple steps in what causes and creates pigment that's on your skin. You need an ingredient portfolio that addresses all 3 steps, right? So most of the hyperpigmentation ingredients that you'll hear about online, they only block one step, and that one step is the formation of pigment called tyrosinase step. Now, if you only block that step, the existing pigment is going to stick around for a very long time. And so you need something to remove that. So you want a more comprehensive treatment with multiple ingredients to target dark spots, and that's how you're going to see the best results. The only ingredient that actually targets all 3 steps is retinoic acid, tretinoin, retinol, tazarotene, these ingredients that actually target all 3 steps along the process. Otherwise, most of your ingredients are going to fall short alone. So just using one product and expecting to see results, I think you're going to be disappointed. This is the reason why we formulated a remedy for dark spots exactly how we did, which is why it's become such a hero product, which is why we have so many incredible reviews on this, which is why our clinical studies continue to show some amazing results. We have confocal microscopy showing that melanin production is decreased on a molecular level. We have clinical results that show just probably some of the most insane visuals I've seen in any dark spot product that's available over the counter. Again, this combines not only retinol, which is that 3-step blocking ingredient, mandelic acid, which is going to remove pigment, kojic acid, glutathione, licorice root, tranexamic acid, niacinamide, silymarin, and acetylglucosamine that all block that tyrosinase step. So something that's very comprehensive. If you're not going to use this, look for a combination of ingredients that's going to really target the entire pigment synthesis pathway.
Yeah, so remedy for dark spot, there's a reason that all of those ingredients should exist in one product. If you couldn't tell, separating out those ingredients to a routine is expensive and time prohibitive. So yeah, hero product, it will make your dark spot routine easier. Now, next up is the expectation of results. Say you bought this and let's say it's working for you, or let's say you think it's not, but it is. Your expectations need to be tempered probably. It takes a while not only to stop the dark spots from forming, but also to remove the existing dark spots. So the results don't happen overnight.
So the mistake that people make is that they quit too soon. And this is really true of treating any skin condition in general. So whether it's fine lines and wrinkles, acne, or hyperpigmentation, people just don't use the products long enough to see results. And I think it's because everyone expects an overnight miracle. And that's because skincare brands promise you an overnight miracle. You'll see even on some packaging, 24 hours, you'll notice an improvement in brightness. And the reality is that nothing works that quickly. Now, in some cases, some people will see results really quickly, but the average person, especially when you have hyperpigmentation, even if it's surface level, you're going to take at least a month to see results, like real tangible results. And then if you have melasma, I would say even 3 months, which leads us to the next mistake, which is once your dark spots are resolved and you're someone who's prone to hyperpigmentation, stopping the treatments once it's resolved.
And this has to do with just life. So like we talked about already, we are constantly producing pigment. We're constantly making melanin, and we're also constantly engaging with life, the sun, and on this journey of aging. So all of those external and intrinsic factors all are working against us. They all are going to increase pigment production, and you are on a trajectory to just get dark spots naturally. So if you stop all of your treatment, you've got the results, you are going to regress. You're going to take steps back faster than if you continued treatment. So it's extremely important to continue that maintenance phase once you're done with that like active treatment phase.
Right. And if we think about this more on a molecular scientific level, that tyrosinase enzyme becomes very important here, right? You don't need to worry so much about the transfer, and you don't need to worry so much about the removal of pigment. But once your dark spots are resolved and you want to maintain even skin tone over time, this is where this column of tyrosinase inhibitors become very important. So if you're someone who's prone to pigmentation and your skin is better, I would say continue some tyrosinase inhibitors with your sunscreen, and that's how you're going to maintain your results over time.
So like he mentioned, when you're looking at your maintenance phase, it doesn't have to look exactly like your active phase. In fact, it probably won't, because you're just trying to keep the same results. But that brings us to a really, really practical point in that you do have these products you purchase, you just simply have to use them. And I will say, in the real world, you're thinking, well, that makes so much sense. It's so logical. No one would do that. You all do that. I do that. This is the #1 reason we see treatments fail probably in the office with patients, is people just don't use what they need to, or they use it too infrequently and never work up to how it's meant to be used.
This is classically me with vitamin C, and this is mostly because my morning is always chaos. I'm always late for something, and so I've never, I don't think, used vitamin C for long enough to actually tell you if it works on my skin or not. You know, some irritate me right away. I know those aren't good for me, but the ones that do, I do like and I can tolerate. Those ones I probably will get maybe a week or so, and then I'll lose the routine. I've been very good with my night routine, but yeah, so being consistent, actually using your products every night. And I think part of the thing is you have to have faith that your products are going to work, right? And I think one of the challenges with the skincare industry is that they've lost a lot of people's faith with some of the products that they've created and some of the over marketing that they do. And so if you don't believe in your products, it's hard to do the same thing every day for 60 days if you don't think it's going to work. And so you have to really buy products that you trust, that have good clinical results on them, because otherwise you're going to give up too soon because you're going to lose faith in the product. product, and that happens to me too.
Now, as you use the ingredients and as you use them consistently, there is thought behind this as well. For example, a problem we regularly see, it actually is too regular for my own peace of mind, is that people use the gold standard treatment, hydroquinone, far too long. And there's a reason for why you should not do this.
Right, so hydroquinone is on that list of goated ingredients that we have here. It's an incredible tyrosinase inhibitor. It is the gold standard. It used to be available over the counter in the United States, but then it was banned as part of the CARES Act, and so now you can only get it as a prescription from a dermatologist. You can get it online from a board certified dermatologist. That can be done through script, or you can see your dermatologist in person, and then in some countries you can still get it available over the counter. Now, it's an incredible ingredient, but the challenge with it is if you use it too long. There's an incredible picture from the New England Journal of Medicine of what we call exogenous ochronosis, and this happens when you use hydroquinone for too long without taking breaks, especially at higher concentrations, especially in darker skin tones. And this is a permanent discoloration that doesn't respond to really any treatments except for some really complex lasers, and even then it only works sometimes. And so when you use hydroquinone too long unmonitored, it can cause a lot of problems. So you have to take a break after 2 or 3 months and make sure that you're being monitored by a dermatologist.
Right, so this is one of the first case reports I ever wrote. One of the first papers I ever published was on this topic, and it's because it can be devastating. You're taking a problem and you're making it worse, and you're turning it into a certain permanent problem. And you'll see this in the real world though, that the breaks look different. Every doctor has their own professional anecdote of how long those breaks should be. There's really no published data on specifically how long those breaks should be. So don't worry if you get a little bit of variation between advice on who you see, but just know you have to take those breaks. It's paramount when using hydroquinone.
The next mistake is just treating the dark spots alone and not the rest of the skin tone. So in some cases with hydroquinone, you could just kind of target it on the melasma, but for most products, you want to be using them over the entire face. One, because it's just going to make your skin look more even, such as retinoids. It's going to just give you a better complexion over time, but also just because the sun doesn't just hit you in one spot, and your acne might pop up in a spot that you weren't treating. And so this is true of acne as well, where a lot of people will just put their acne treatments on their active spots, but that's not going to prevent new ones from forming. And the same is true for hyperpigmentation and melasma. Most of these products, you want to use them over the entire face, and that's going to make sure that you're going to prevent new dark spots from forming, but also treat existing dark spots.
Now, another huge mistake that we see all the time, and again, no judgment from me, is picking at your skin. Popping your pimples, scratching your bug bites, any of these things that traumatize the skin will make the inflammatory, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation much worse and last a lot longer.
Absolutely, and we see this even in subtle situations where somebody might have what we call seborrheic dermatitis, which is basically like dandruff of the face, or they use hair dye and they get a little itchy or reactive to it, and then they kind of scratch at it, or somebody who has eczema or allergies and then they rub their eyes. A lot of this can cause inflammation and hyperpigmentation. So any type of thing that is going to trigger those melanocytes is going to make your hyperpigmentation worse. And one of the worst things that you can do is pop your pimples. Now, when you pop a pimple, especially when it's not ready to pop, it basically explodes underneath the surface. So when it explodes underneath the surface of your skin, all that pus and all those inflammatory cells are going to trigger those melanocytes to produce more melanin. And when that happens, you're going to get those hyperpigmentation spots that stick around for a very, very long time. So don't scratch at your skin, don't pick at your skin, don't pop your pimples.
And another thing we see is people just ignoring external factors that may be contributing to their dark spots. Now, it is kind of like an intrinsic cause. It is kind of like something we talked about already, like the sun, but it's more broad than you suspect. It could be the sun, it could be hormones, it could be medications. In some studies, it could even be like pollution in the air around you. And you need to be thoughtful in what you decide to address, what can you address, and then take a deliberate step forward to address it.
Right, and so we call this the exposome. It's sort of the combination of all the factors that contribute to your skin and your skin issues. And so this could be the sun, and maybe you're wearing sunscreen already, and it could be your hormones, and maybe there's nothing you can do about that. So there is some of these that can be a little bit challenging, but looking for those causes that can be triggering it. And so one of these, like we mentioned a bit earlier, is medications. There are some oral medications, there are some topical medications that can cause you to get hyperpigmentation, and they can be a little bit different different in appearance. It can almost look a little bit ruddy to the skin. So it can look different from medications, and knowing what those are and eliminating those can also be helpful.
And the last thing is skipping a dermatologist evaluation for stubborn spots, because not all dark spots respond the same. They are not all the same. Some of them are just a cosmetic concern, or they might be a medical concern. So it could be a bad mole, a melanoma that's changing, or just something that's textured, like a seborrheic keratosis that will never respond to any over-the-counter topical treatment that you want to use.
Right, so if you're somebody who's tried all the best dark spot treatments over the counter, and you've tried all the best prescription treatments that you could get online, and you're still not seeing results, sometimes it's some type of dark spot or discoloration that will not respond to any treatment, and in some cases they can be harmful, like in the case of melanoma. Now, these can be subtle, sometimes they can be a bit more obvious, but they're not going to respond to topical treatments, and going to see a dermatologist after you've given these things a fair shot is very important, especially if you have anything that's changing or evolving or not improving at all. So getting a dermatologist evaluation can be very helpful, and like Dr. Maxfield said, seborrheic keratoses, these are elevated, these do not respond to topical treatments, and I think a lot of people do get disappointed by their topical treatments when they expect them to resolve all forms of discoloration on the skin. So knowing the difference between something that resolves and something that doesn't resolve can help with some of the frustration that you've probably had when it comes to products. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful. We'll put a link to the guide below, and let us know what you want us to see next.
All right, we appreciate you. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.